Hello, Beatrice. I'm Tammy Reese. It's such an honor to be here with you today. I'm so fascinated about your profound and inspirational work in interior design and want to know your backstory of what you love most about being an interior designer and how did you become involved in this niche?
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's a great pleasure. So I love the aspect of interior design in general because there's something soothing about a space. And when it's correctly designed, when it's put together properly, and the way, and so um, you wanted to know how I got into it originally?
Yeah,
So originally, you mean into interior design or in terms of my niche?
interior design in general.
Okay. So I recently got married and
Congratulations.
no, at the time.
Got you.
And I redesigned our condo and furnished it. And people came to visit and they said, "Who is your interior designer?" And I said, "I did it." And they said, "You should do this for a living." So, I decided that, I was gonna venture in this new project and just take on studies and become an interior designer. And the reason I created my own niche was because of my personal experience with my middle child who was born with developmental delays. So he was born early, and I was tracking his milestones, and he wasn't hitting his milestones. And he was diagnosed with, ADHD and sensory processing disorder and a language processing disorder. And he was completely dysregulated. He was, we were doing so many services. And during COVID, I reached out to his occupational therapist and I said, could colors affect a child who's very sensitive, to the world? And what about, you know, clutter and things like that? And she said, absolutely. And so that's when I dove into the world of sensory processing disorder and I read every single book that I could. And I took on this project and I changed his room and it made a huge difference. And he used to tell me before I even went into this, he used to say, "Can you change my room? I don't like it." And I was thinking, this was a really cool room. Why would I change it? It was light blue at the bottom, it was navy blue on top, and it had stars, and it was meant to kind of, simulate the sky. And I said, I'm not changing that. And once I got into, learning everything I could about sensory processing disorder, I was like, this is really overstimulating. And so I painted everything. I took on the project myself. I painted everything like a light color was like a cream white, and it made a huge difference. And I took everything out of the room and I just brought the overstimulation down. I neutralized it and it made a huge difference. And I also created a sensory gym in the house where they can jump and just get those heebie-jeebies out. And that made a difference. And I was sitting with it and I said, I got to do this for other people. I want to help.
Wow. You are making a huge impact, and I'm so eager to learn more about your expertise. From your expertise and experience, are people with sensory preferences drawn to natural light, Beatrice, or would they benefit from adjustable window treatments?
So natural light is best for everyone. And so I always recommend natural light. Uh, in terms of window treatments, it really depends on how much sunlight you get. And it also depends on the recessed lighting in the room. I try to recommend a natural yellow light for recessed lighting as opposed to a bright white light, kind of like in a hospital setting that would take away from your energy and make you tired.
What is it about this work that keeps you motivated to keep going?
There is something about this niche that makes me so passionate. You're helping individuals, kids and adults, to just look into themselves and figure out the psychology behind why they don't feel great in a certain space. And I have a background in psychology, and I've always been interested in people, and I have high emotional intelligence. I can feel people. And by doing that, then we cater the space to the individual. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating for me, and it's extremely satisfying for them because then they really feel comfortable in their space.
What else would you like our audience to know about you and the work that you do?
So something else is that through doing this work for individuals with sensory needs, initially it was just kids, I realized that adults also have that. And adults adults without sensory needs, everybody has sensory preferences. So everyone has a certain type, a certain palette of colors that they are attracted to, or a certain style. And there's always a reasoning behind it. And so the way that I've started to design all spaces now is with that same approach, like a psychological and sensory friendly approach. And anyone can benefit from this because we all have our little quirks. And back in the day, in our generation, we didn't have the tools that we have today. Like we do a lot for our children. Our children have this and this and that. We're on it. We go to the doctor, we get it diagnosed, we have the right services. Back in the day, we didn't have that knowledge or the motivation to go and look for it because it was just not popular to do that. And so we used to have to kind of compensate on our own in order to, survive in the world. And so today we have these quirks that kind of stayed with us, and we're still compensating, but we don't realize that there are ways that we can be helped. And there's a reason behind it.
How important is it to have easily accessible storage to reduce visual clutter?
Very, very important. I love to recommend for individuals to hide things behind closed doors
Mm.
because, out of sight, out of mind. And I have some clients who tell me, but I need the inside of the closet or the cupboard to be organized as well, because even though it's out of sight, out of mind, I know that it would be messy in there. So there's like an additional element. And so then we work with how to organize it because there's different bins. There's clear bins, there's opaque bins. And if it's a clear bin, you're able to see what you're going to look for. Whereas if it's like an opaque bin, then you don't even go and look for it. So it's very interesting, but it's very helpful.
Have you done any other spaces besides home environments?
So one great space that I recently designed is a sensory friendly barber shop.
Oh, so cool.
And that was fantastic and so beautiful because I had to really think about individuals who are so sensory sensitive, who are scared to go and get a haircut. And how do we make that experience comfortable and soothing for them? And that starts with the environment and making sure that the walls are not, screaming with loud colors and a lot of wall hangings. And so that was a great success for us. Like that was just very, beautiful.
We're back to school, which can be a very stressful time for many. What can parents do to help kids with sensory preferences from your point of view?
I would say, spend some time with your child organizing to figure out what goes where and allow your child to partake in that process so that they have agency, and they feel like this is their space. A lot of times, parents just do stuff for their kids and then they say, well, how come you don't keep it organized? There's so much clutter, there's so much this, there's so much that. If you allow your child to partake in this process, then they're part of it, it's theirs. And also to ask your child and observe them, write down in a journal when you observe them, and and see if there's anything that they can notice about their child that can be changed in terms of their space. So, does this child like to spend time in their room? Yes or no? Why not? Okay, let's take a look at the lighting. Is there too much out there? You ask your child questions. Do you like when this stuff is out here? Does it bother you? You look at the child's sleep schedule. Do they have an issue? What's the routine like? So those are things that are very important. And once they start making changes, I always recommend to do it in stages. And that's from a personal experience. Children with ADHD or special needs, and any kids really, but children with ADHD or sensory processing disorder or special needs, they have a hard time with transitions. So once you transition back to school, there's different things that you're going to have to do. And so you can't just do it all at once. You got to do it in stages and get the child to do it to feel comfortable with the change.
What advice would you have for anyone who aspires to design spaces for people with sensory preferences?
The way to do it would just be to immerse yourself in the knowledge of sensory processing disorder and special needs, and make sure that you understand the psychology behind why kids and adults do the things that they do and design according to that.
Is there a great success story that you can share with us?
I have many great success stories. I designed a playroom for a family, and the two boys, they're on the spectrum, and we did the impossible and made it possible. They wanted a zip line in the house, and we were able to create that because usually you have a zip line outdoors and it's very hard
Mhm.
to secure it in the house.
Wow.
And there's something so exciting about a child that doesn't speak, and to see the smile in his eyes just brighten up because he gets to swing on this zip line. I mean, assisted, obviously, but it was so exciting to watch this child just glow of happiness. And the way that I designed the zip line would be that once they reach the end, they actually fall onto a bouncy house.
Oh,
So it was really, really fun. Yeah. And it just made me happy.
I want to go on a zip line and fall on the bouncy house. I can imagine that would just light up a kid's whole life.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, I just want to say, Beatrice, how much I appreciate you and the work that you do. Thank you so much for your time, Beatrice, and please keep up the amazing inspirational work.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.